Ladies and gentlemen, you'll have to excuse me. I'm a little alarmed. I just saw a wolf.
Where?
No, a regular one. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Clash of Cultures from WizKids. In Clash of Cultures Monumental Edition from WizKids, 2 to 4 players take on the roles of various civilizations as they attempt to dominate and become the greatest civilizations in history. Now, I reviewed the original edition of Clash of Cultures from Z-Man Games years ago, and this Monumental Edition incorporates the expansion to that game, which I have not reviewed. So I'm going to go ahead, give you an overview of this game, and then tell you my thoughts. Now, there's no game board per se. Essentially, you have tiles. These are placed face down at the beginning of the game to give kind of a fog of civilization building. Essentially, you won't know where you and your friends are going to explore until you explore it. Players are also going to get their own kind of settlement as well as a settler that will try to explore and found new cities. Each player will also have a player board that at the top has numbers where you can track various game resources like wood, food, ore, ideas, gold, etc., etc. The rest of the game board will also have various spaces for advances that you will gain over the course of the game. You're also going to have on your player board 3 cubes up in the top right corner next to the word event. Very important as the game plays out. Each player is also going to take a unique player civilization advanced board that they will place next to their game board that will allow them certain unique advantages throughout the game. Now, the game will take place over the course of 6 rounds, and during each round, each player will have 3 turns. During each turn, you will take 3 actions. Now, there are various different actions you can do in the game. For instance, you can create an advance for your civilization. Now, typically, this takes 2 food, but you can use other resources to substitute for that as well. But essentially, what you do is when you do an advance, you take a cube from the top right corner of your player board near the event, and then you place that in one of your advance spaces. Now, you can only place that advance in a space that you already have the top taken. Now, you start, I think, with 2 columns taken, so you can place in any one of those spots, but if you want to go in any of the other advanced kind of columns, you have to place in the top spot before you can access the bottom spots. Now, you'll also have at the bottom of that board 3 government tracks. You have to have the appropriate prerequisite for the government in another one of those tracks before you can access the governments. Now, when you place it, if you place it on a yellow spot, you gain a happy token. If you place it on a blue spot, you gain a culture token. You can found a city. Essentially, you remove a settler from the board, and whatever space he is in, you can go ahead and place a settlement there. You can move. Now, you can either move up to 3 different units or 3 different groups of units. These are units that are in the same space and they are traveling together. You can activate 3 units or 3 groups of units. If they are moving into an unexplored region, you must flip that region over. They move in there and they end their action there. Now, each city is either going to be happy, neutral, or unhappy. So you place a happy token next to it, a no token next to it, or an unhappy token next to it to show kind of what its state is. Now, you can increase its steps by spending the happy tokens you have in order to move it up from negative to neutral to positive. Now, you can also choose to activate the city. You can activate the city to do different things. You can do it to recruit units. Now, you have to pay the units cost, and different units, they cost different amounts of the resources in order to build those specific units in the city. You can also activate the city to collect resources. Essentially, depending on the city's size, you can go ahead and collect from that number of spaces around it. Now, if you have a happy token, then you can gain a +1, an additional resource. If your city is unhappy, you can only gain 1 resource total. And then you can also construct a building. And this is how cities grow. Essentially, you have different types of buildings that you can build. You can build ports, you can build academies, you can build markets. There are different things you do that give you different advantages. And sometimes in order to do different things, you have to have a city that has that specific building in it. So your building literally physically grows. You've got your little circular settlement, and then you put part of a city next to that settlement in order to make it grow and expand. And that's going to be very important for a lot of different reasons. Now, one of the actions you can take is an influence culture. Now, this is important because the size of your city will dictate just how far your range is for this kind of an action. So if your city, if you have a size 5 city, then you can do this up to 5 spaces away. But essentially, you're going to roll a die depending on what the roll is, and you can influence that with culture markers. You can actually influence one of the buildings in somebody else's city. So, for instance, if the Roman player is trying to influence the Mayan player, and they successfully roll, they would replace the Mayan player's, say, market, if they so chose, with a Roman market. Now, the Mayan player still uses that market, it still functions as theirs, but at the end of the game, it's going to give the Roman player a victory point. Now, after you've completed a round, you have the status phase. During the status phase, a few different things are going to happen. If no player has a city on the board, the game is over. If you have reached the end of the 6th phase, then the game is over. Otherwise, you keep going. Every player during the status phase gets to receive 1 free advance. And I believe they take the cube from their supply and not from the event section of their board, and they just get a free advance. Players are also going to draw some cards, an objective card and an action card. Now, players over the course of the game are going to have these action cards. These action cards are going to let them do things, take special actions to give them help or to hurt other players. They're also going to allow them to maybe engage in tactics during battles if they have the tactics advance. So the action cards can be very helpful. Your objective cards is how you score points. There are ways to score points. Not the only way, but if you can fulfill the specific ideas of your objectives, which kind of give you a path toward victory, then you gain victory points at the end of the game. If you've got a size 1 city, you can choose to raise it and gain 1 gold. At this time, you can also pay a culture and a happiness token in order to change your government from one of your government systems and one of the columns to another. Next, you're going to determine the player for the next round. You're going to look at the number of happiness tokens and culture tokens you have. Whoever has the highest, they get to decide who the first player is going to be for the next round. Now, another important aspect of the game is that as you are getting those advances, again, you're taking that from the section of the board that says Event. When you have taken all 3 of those and there are no more cubes in the event section, you draw an event card. Now, an event card can be all sorts of things. It can benefit your society, it can not benefit your society. It may create barbarians on the board that try to attack you or do other funky things or may move them. It may affect all the players, it may affect none of the players at the current time. So you never know what's going to come up with those event cards. They can be good things or bad things. Now, after you have resolved that event, you put 3 more tokens back in that event space on your player board. So players are going around and around. They are, of course, expanding their empires. They're exploring, they're exterminating the enemy, and they're exploiting their resources. It's a 4X game. And you're going around, you're doing all of these things, trying to score those victory points. Now, at the end of the game, you go to scoring. You're going to get 1 point for every city building you have on the board, and a half point for every advance you have on your player board. You're going to gain 2 points per objective, and if during the course of the game you've actually taken the time to build a wonder, you get 4 points for any wonder you have on the board. Some events may allow you to gain victory points, and there are also leaders. Sometimes you're going to have leaders that come out and do battle during this game, and if you've destroyed any leaders by taking their card, they too are worth victory points at the end of the game. You go ahead, you add up all of those victory points together, and whoever has the most victory points wins Clash of Cultures Monumental Edition. So there's more going on here. I'm just giving you a very brief overview. Now, as I say, I had played and reviewed the original game. I'd never played it with the expansion. And just about the time I decided to buy the expansion, you couldn't find it anywhere. It was out of print, and it was hard to find. Now, Z-Man Games did the original version, and I got to tell you, I really enjoyed that original game. I didn't play it much. I played it a couple of times, I think 2 or 3 times, and it was one I always wanted to go back to, and I really, really enjoyed it, though. It was a little... It was one of those games that was hard to get at the table because there's a learning curve to it. And there's a learning curve here. I don't think this is a overly complex game. I don't think it's a particularly tough game. I think the systems in it are fairly simple when you get down to it. But I think there is an intimidation factor. And I think frankly, the original game as I was just getting into this wider world of board games, it intimidated me a little bit. I was not intimidated by the Monumental Edition. That's just because I played the original game and I'd read up on it. But I can see where some people would be intimidated because there's a lot going on. There's no single rule or system in this game that is hard at all. But you put them all together, some people can get intimidated because it's a big, big game. Now, as I say, I love the original game. I just thought that was great, and I always wanted to play the expansion. And I was so glad when they announced this. They announced it like 2 years ago because I've been expecting this game, to arrive for a while. The good people at WizKids said they'd send me a copy, and I've been waiting for this game for like 2 years now. And so I was super excited when it finally arrived. I was just thrilled when it finally arrived. I went back to Utah recently, and I played it with George, who I played the first game with when I did the review. And, of course, Holly was there, and Mark was there, and the four of us played this game. There were a few little things that were a little bit confusing right at the beginning that we quickly figured out. And they were issues in our brains. They weren't issues with the game. And we started going. Once we got into the groove of it, it just sailed. I mean, it just played like a Cadillac. I mean, this thing was just nice, It was just smooth. And we had a lot of fun with it. And it's a great civilization building game. It's a great game that it's got that epic feel to it. It's got this real big epic feel of world building. It's got a feel of it's 4X. You know what a 4X. That's what I'm trying to say. It feels like any good 4X game does, where you feel like it's kind of a sandbox, it's kind of an open world, and you can go ahead and do the things you want to do. And it's not surprising. The designer here was the fellow that designed Merchants and Marauders, which is another great game, a pirate-themed game. And but it was just great. It was fun, and it was George was cleaning our chronometers there, and when the first time he did an influence roll on me and he took over one of my buildings, I was so mad. You got a lot of actions here to do, and just see that continent unfold and see your civilizations unfold, and you get that real feel of your domain. And it's not a terribly big board. There's not a lot of spaces when you get all those tiles flipped over, which is good because it means you're going to come into conflict quicker. It seems like the first 2 or 3 rounds is really about building. It almost feels kind of a solitaire game. You're going out and building, and then once you come into contact with each other, then it did the investment I created early in the game, did it pay off? Did it work out for me? But this game's got so much going on that's fun and that's interesting, that's engaging. It's a bit of a longer game. You may be out this 4 hours, maybe a little bit more. I mean, if you're all on the same page and moving quickly, maybe you can get through it sooner. Like I say, we stumbled a bit at the beginning, but it is a longer game. So that's kind of the downside to some people, is it is a longer game. But man, it's fun. I was so excited to get to play this, and then as I say too, with the expansion elements to this game, you've got the leaders, which I just touched on. But leaders, you can build leader. You can only have one at a time, but they give you special abilities. There's different units here. There's elephants, right, that are here, and then there's pirates that attack you. They're like sea barbarians, And then how each civilization is unique. You have those kind of unique little boards where you can develop certain things and gain certain abilities that nobody else can. It's so much fun when you develop something that you really, really like, and then you're so angry when somebody has something you don't and you want it. This is a phenomenal game. This is a phenomenal game, and I'm so glad. I gave away the original years. I think it was again when I moved to Texas. I gave away the original. And I just like, I just didn't know that I was going to get at the table again. But I'm so glad this game has come out. I'm so glad I've got it. I'm so glad it's got the expansion baked into this game right here. It's not an inexpensive game. I think its MSRP's north of the $100 mark. So it's a game you got to know you want? Do you like 4X games? Do you like civilization building games? Do you like games that can be mean, that can have a bit of a take that, but they're not exclusively that, or even mostly that? Do you like seeing your society evolve in the way you want it to? Do you like having control over how the different technological and social and cultural advances you want to do? The game sounds intimidating, but it is so straightforward. I love this game. I love this game so much. I think I got to play this a few more times. I got to put this head to head with Civilization: A New Dawn, because I love that game as well, which has some very different mechanics. They're similar in a lot of ways, but they're mechanically they're very, very different. But I kind of wonder which one would come out on top in that contest. I got to play this one some more, and frankly, I got to play the Civ one some more with the expansion. I think I've only played with the expansion once or twice, and I really like that. But man, I really like Clash of Cultures Monumental Edition a lot. And I was pretty sure I was going to, because I like the core game so much. I'm rambling now. I just want to communicate how much I really, really like this game. As far as kind of new additions go, it's just a great new package, and really excited about it. Really excited to play it again, and just wish I had some more friends up here in Rock Springs that'll play with me. But hopefully I'll find some. But anyway, 100% recommendation. Buy it. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We'd ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. I'd also ask you, ladies and gentlemen, please give a thumb to this video on Board Game Geek, and indeed all of our videos for that matter. That helps us out a lot. And also, please check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD. Please subscribe. We talk about military history and fun things like that. You know, ladies and gentlemen, ordinarily, I don't like to share a lot of personal stuff on the channel. I'm kind of somebody who likes their privacy. I just don't want to talk about board games and history and stuff. But I thought I would share a little bit of something with you. I recently ended a 3-year relationship, and you know, I'm doing okay. It wasn't my relationship.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
Barbarians move!